the timer is ready to go. Whenever you're ready, Grant.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world tonight. Thank you for joining me, and I want to welcome my assistant, Sinead Wellahan from Toronto. How you doing, Sinead?
I'm doing very well, thanks. How are you?
Good, fantastic. Sinead's an educator in Toronto, and she's agreed, as I've mentioned before, to help me do some interviews, and she's done a fantastic job so far. And I just want to ask you, are you excited about the Academy Awards tonight?
I used to watch them religiously, but not so much anymore. I haven't had cable TV in about 14 years. There's
Oh, there you go.
too much on it that I don't want to see.
Because you're a big movie buff. Today I asked you, who did you want to interview in terms of who you thought the message you should hear. So today we're going to do our own little Academy Awards, and we've got our own little red carpet. And I want to know from you, who's coming down the red carpet today? Who's got the message that people need to hear?
Well, she's definitely a star to me. Her name is Marjie Bassler, and Marjie is a U.S. citizen. You and I are Canadians. You're in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Marjie is American, and she is a person that I met on a retreat, a C5 retreat with Costa Macraeus while he was leading the retreat, along with his wife, Hollis. And it was in Joshua Tree this past October, and I didn't know anybody who was going to be there. I'd had some communication with Costa beforehand, but that was it. And Marjie was there along with her lovely sister, Eva. And so Marjie all of us got to share our experiences, but I was really intrigued by not just Marjie's experience, but also the way she talks about it, because she's just incredibly down to earth and matter of fact about it, very authentic. And to her, it seems to just be this is just normal. This is just what happens to me. So I found that very intriguing, because a lot of people would think it's not normal, and in a good way. So there's two things I wanted to focus on with Marjie. One is that she receives these really beautiful transmissions from beings that she calls the guides. And I'm lucky enough to be on a mailing list where she sends them out every week, and they always give me a lift. And the other experience is that Marjie has been to a manted planet. And so I thought that was a very unusual experience, and she was able to recall it with great detail. So Marjie, I just want to thank you so much for being here and being willing to share these amazing experiences with us. Thanks so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So I think what we can do is just start with the first question that comes to mind, not just for me, but also for you. How did this channeling, or the transmitting, as you've also called it, with your guides, how did this begin, and when did it begin?
Well, there's a really talented intuitive here, and I saw that she was offering a workshop in channeling. This was back in 2013. And just on a whim, I took it. I didn't think anything would happen from that. But one of the first things she did was have us get in touch with our spirit guides. And I met three of them. I have different guides right now, but at the time they were, one was Allura, who is a robed woman. I can't see her face, but she has a long gray braid down her back and wings, so I think she's angelic, but she has a great energy field. The next one is named Wally, and he is a hawk or sometimes an owl, so kind of a combination of those two, and he's kind of a protector. He's a little bit crabby. And the third one is called Oscar Mayer Wiener. And Oscar is a tree, and he connects heaven and earth. So those were my first guides, and they were extremely funny. They were kind of manic, but they were very funny. And then after I just did the channeling for myself, so I would just write down whatever came. And I think I was doing it for about 2 years when I had a psychic reading with Julie, who had done the class. And she said there were some new guides waiting to come in. So those are the ones I have now. And I have visualized them as being like a column of light that has 3 parts. And they say that they are part of a consciousness group. So disembodied spirits from a higher consciousness level, and they're here to help humanity at this time. So they offer us messages of hope and just ways that we can live our lives better, and also to let us know that we are more than what exists here on this earthly plane. So about 3 years ago, I got the prompting that I was to share this with other people. So I started a mailing list that was start out with just my family, and I have a great family. I have 4 sisters and a brother, and an honorary sister who actually has a certificate that makes her our honorary sister. So my brother isn't that much interested in ET kind of stuff, but he's pretty open-minded, so he listens to us. And so anyway, I started sending the messages to them and a few friends. And I've gradually added to the mailing list. It's still very small. And then I think it was last year I started putting them on Facebook. So on my own page and into a few other groups. And I just started a group called Messages from the Guides, where I post their messages weekly. So I'm sending them out weekly. So that's pretty much the history of it. And I have a reading that I did for this this interview, so I'll read that now. And the way I do it is I start with a question, and that kind of gives me a focus point and gets rid of any other thoughts in my mind. And then they respond with, "We are here for you" in this question, and that kind of establishes the link. So the question was, what would you like me to tell people about you and your messages? We are here for you in this question, and thank you for asking. Please tell everyone that we are here to help humanity at this time of change. In our messages, we offer guidance and ideas, but not prescriptions. We do not offer a how-to manual. Each who is open to our messages will get what they need according to their own experiences and knowingness that they bring. This is as it should be. No one is above another. All are needed at this time. We say to you that these messages will not appeal to everyone. This is also as it should be. Each can find their own way that works best for them. There is no judgment in this. We ask people to stay in their knowingness, beingness, awareness, and willingness. When you do so, you allow for your life to change for the better as you see it. And these things we mention, knowingness, beingness, awareness, and willingness, apply to more than just the earthly plane, for you also exist beyond this. You are of the universe. The more you explore this idea, the more you will find your connection to everyone and everything on out into the universe. How can you hurt another? How can you not cherish the earth once you realize that they are all a part of you? This is a time of great change, and no matter the method you choose, if you are willing to cast aside those limiting belief systems that you have outgrown, you will find that you are helping to change the world into one that operates on peace and love and creativity. This can be done. We invite you to participate and to have fun on your journey. We are done for now. But they're not really done, because then they tell a joke, and they tell the absolutely worst jokes you've ever heard.
We need to hear the joke. Let's go. Let's go.
Here's the joke.
Okay.
Why did the spirit guides go on YouTube?
Okay.
Why? Because they were feeling sheepish.
That's hilarious that they do that. That is so funny. I didn't actually realize that they would finish off with a joke. Do they do that every time?
No,
Okay.
they don't tell too many jokes, because I always tell them how lame they are.
That's incredible. That's wonderful. We were actually talking about that before the show, if you remember, Margie. We were talking about, I said, well, the message may not be for everybody. It may be only for the people who need to hear it. And that's actually is in the message that they gave you. So I'm honored that they would actually have a message for us today, it makes us feel a little special that we get to sort of interact. And I think I mentioned before the show as well that Desta, who helps me put up stuff on the internet and stuff like that, she was channeling, and that's when I first met her. And I said to her, what I'll probably be doing to you is like, can you ask him about this? Ask him about that. I'd have all these questions. Ask him this, ask him that. And it's because if you know the statistics, 40% of all experiencers claim at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. So it's sort of like you are one of the people who has made contact for however you do it, and you've gotten into a field where there are answers for people. So I'm honored that you would share this with us. And can you tell your procedure? Like, how long does it take to actually get a message, or what's the procedure you use to make contact?
Well, I was taught, and when I started out, I first started like with a prayer, you know, and asking all these beings to come in and surrounding myself with protective light. And now I just sit down, I ask the question, and they say, we are here for you. And I write it down, or sometimes speak it into my cell phone, and then transcribe it.
And you've got how much? Nine things full, nine
notebooks.
nine notebooks full of stuff. That's incredible.
Yeah, so it's hundreds of readings, and they're all pretty short. I think they do it so that it's more accessible to people, because a lot of people don't have time to sit down and read a book or a whole long thing. So most of the stuff I post is like 2 typewritten pages or less. Wow. So people can look at it and read it quickly, but it still has a lot of content.
I'll ask one more question, then I'll put it back to Sinead. Did they give you any indication why you're being given the messages, or is this a mission? Do you believe that you have, before you were born, you had some sort of mission that you were going to do this kind of stuff?
Well, they make a point of telling me that I'm not special, that anybody can do this if they want to. Yeah. But that I agreed to do it, which of course I don't remember at all, but
right on.
Apparently at some point I agreed to do this. So
beautiful. Beautiful.
That's why I'm doing it.
Doing a good job. You're doing a good job at it.
Thank you.
Sinead, go ahead.
Wow. Well, I was just thinking, you know, Margie, in response to what you said about the messages being short to be essentially accessible and respectful to people who don't have a lot of time. They're short, but they're so sweet, to use that expression, you know, short and very sweet. They're so beautiful. And yeah. Whenever I read them, the interesting thing is, because I've gotten to know you first and I'm familiar with, you know, your voice and the way you speak and your cadence, so to speak, there's a distinct voice that they have. When I read the messages, it's almost like I can hear a totally different voice in my head, imagining what they sound like as I'm reading it. And it's always such a nice feeling. You know, it's a very calming, very loving, reassuring, supportive kind of feeling. So is that what you feel like while you are channeling them? Like, what is the actual experience like? I mean, does it happen at any time and you suddenly feel something and you know it's going to happen? Or because you said you pray and you invite them in, do you get an electric kind of current feeling? What happens to you?
It's not like they're always giving me messages. It's when I sit down and ask that I get a message. And I have to set part of my mind aside in order to bring them through. So it's not like I have emotion or any particular feeling. It feels like it's happening on the right side of my brain, that this is coming in.
Grant is gonna like that. Grant, you must like that a lot.
Yeah, I like that. That's right.
He talks about right brain, left brain stuff all the time. Grant, you must have something you want to say to that.
Yeah, that's the sort of the notion, is that you have the left male brain that wants to fight and ego, and it's all about me. And then you have the right brain, the female brain, that is here to maybe try to save us before it's too late. And that it believes in oneness, it believes in family, it sees the whole rather than the details and stuff. So it's interesting that you would say, you know, it's coming in through the right side.
Well, for me, it's more like setting aside the thinking part of the brain.
Exactly.
And so when I get the message, I'm aware It's hard to describe. I'm kind of aware of what they're saying, but when I'm done, I don't remember it. I have to read it to know what they said.
Yeah.
So at first, I mean, they don't require any devotion or, you know,
Mhm.
any
Yeah.
of that stuff. They don't require reverence. So sometimes I used to tell them, I wish you would finally tell us some kind of message because you're really not saying anything.
Yeah.
And then I would read it, and they actually did give a message. It was just that I didn't remember what they were saying. So
That is, I've just written a book called Contact Modalities, which is what I say. We're actually doing a DNA experiment with channelers like you, and the whole idea is that what you do is to say everybody has the signal, and I think you may agree with me on this. The signal is there. It's the ability to shut down the noise in the mind to hear the signal.
yeah, yeah. So we're
Almost
like,
like, like last night, Sinead went to the opera, and I said, well, that's a good chance for you to turn off the signal because she really doesn't like opera. So I said, there's a chance for you to, shut off the noise and sort of zone out and pick up a message. But passing.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I would do at the opera is turn it off.
yeah, the opera just has it's too much melodrama for me. I go as a favor to somebody who I care about who's done a lot for me, and she has no idea that I don't like it. I just go to make her happy, but it's really not my thing. So we were kind of joking about that. But to go back to what you were saying, Margie, you get a sort of sensation on the right side of your mind, so to speak. Like, is it an actual feeling, or just
Um,
keep going with what you were saying about that?
retrospect, yes, but when I'm doing it, it's just, I mean, I just do it. I can't tell you how it works or anything. It just, it's just something I've learned how to do. And now I don't do any prayers or protection or meditation ahead of time or anything. I just sit down, and once I ask the question, I'm connected. And I know who or what I'm connecting to, so I'm not worried about anything other coming in.
Hmm. I'm noticing you're calling them they, right? It's a plural, not a singular. So are you also said that you can't remember the experience, that you have to go back and read it. So my question might be futile, but I'm wondering if you had the experience of hearing a voice, like many voices as one, like they as one voice communicating with you or something like that.
Yeah, it comes through as one, but it's not a voice. I mean, it's totally telepathic, so it just comes in as thought. And I think that's why it's hard for a lot of people to believe that it's really happening,
Hmm.
is because it's just thought. So how do I know that I'm not just making it up?
So how do you know you're not just making it up?
Well, like you said, it's a different languaging. It's a different voice than mine. I mean, not physical voice, but different wording. And I'm not that wise, you know. When I sit down, I don't have anything in mind. It's like I sit down, I ask the question, and then there's just void space. I have no thought or no words, and then the thoughts start coming in. So it's not like I'm making something, I'm not starting out with a preconceived idea. And if something happens that the connection is broken, I can't complete whatever they were saying. I can't fill it in because it's not mine,
Wow.
if that makes sense.
Can I ask, have they ever given you something that really surprised you?
Uh, Probably. I can't think of anything offhand, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Because you said like a lot of it seems like just common sort of, and a lot of it is you get the same message that is coming through. It's a very simple message. We try to complicate it, and we're waiting for some elaborate thing. But I was just wondering whether you maybe can down the road, maybe if you can think of something, because that's usually would indicate that that's not you. I mean, or like for example, you talk about the jokes. I mean, you wouldn't tell such stupid jokes. I mean, if it was you making it up, you'd have.
Yeah, I could do better than that, I think. But they're pretty bad.
Well, Margie, I'm curious about the foundation of this experience because you said that you took a class and that's when you started being able to do this. So, first of all, when was that? Like, how old were you? When was that? And then, what about your life prior to that experience? Was anything already happening for you that kind of set the stage for this to occur, or was it just like a door suddenly blew open?
Well, it was in 2013 that I took the channeling class, and I had taken some psychic workshops from the same intuitive that I had met. You know how things happen where you connect with people like serendipitously, synchronistically. um, I'm not much of a psychic, I have to say, but I think in my family we've always had some kind of paranormal things happening. Like I've had animals who have died, had their spirits come to me, and my sister had a spirit come to her of a good friend of hers who was elderly, and his spirit came to her and told her that he was passing, you know, that he had died. And right after that, the phone rang and somebody told her that he had died. So, and another sister has had our stepfather and our brother appeared to her and helped her out when she needed help. So, you know, it's kind of normal for us, and it's a cumulative thing. So, like, I didn't always believe in animal communication, but now I know that people can do that.
Can I jump in with a question? Because I'm interested in the spirit world, the connection between the ETs and the spirit world. Have they talked to you about the spirit world, like these kind of things, the connection? And how do you see the spirit world in terms of what we're dealing with here? Are they all in the same sort of etheric world?
Yeah. Yes, I think so. Yeah. So it gets kind of murky because I think ETs they can be physical beings, but they're also in other dimensions.
Yeah.
So some of them are embodied and some of them are not embodied, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. So the ones I'm talking that I channel are disembodied spirits, and they're higher dimensional beings.
And they told you that? I mean, have you asked them about this, like the spirit and the interdimensional? Like, have you asked them, are you an alien? Have you asked them what they are or how
Yeah.
that all fits together? So tell me what that, because that's the part that really interests me, because I'm actually doing a book right now because people think it's just straight ETs. And I'm going, no, I think it's something more complex than that. So what have they told you about who they are?
Well, that they're a higher consciousness group that's here to help us, that they're not embodied at this time. But a couple of times I've also gotten messages that they are the Mantis beings that I'm in contact with. So I don't know. It's possible that they're both things.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, once you get out of this reality, it's kind of, I don't know enough yet to make any determinations.
Well, maybe we can we can use what you just said as a way to jump over to your experience of going to a manted planet. And we can certainly come back to the guides again. I'm endlessly fascinated with them on a, from a purely selfish perspective. So maybe we can jump back to them. But given that you've just mentioned that you're in contact with manted beings, and I know that you've told me that you've been to a manted planet and described it in quite a bit of detail, can you give us a bit of a timeline with regard to that experience?
Sure. Well, there's only one conscious physical memory I have, and that's way back when I was in college. I woke up standing at the window and seeing a silver disc shooting away. And I'm kind of thinking that I was allowed to keep that memory kind of as an entry point into all this. So let's see, when was that? 2017, 16 or 17, I had a hypnotic regression because I wanted to find out, if anything had happened when I saw that disc. And it's kind of funny, I played the CD a couple times and then it wouldn't work anymore, but I listened to it a few days ago and they let me listen to the first 10 minutes.
Wow.
So first, I was regressed to an earlier incident before that when I saw the disc. And it was when I was in elementary school. And I was standing in a clearing in a field, which I think may have been metaphorical, but I could feel that there was something in the woods. And these gray beings, the short grays came out and they took me by the arms, and they weren't hurting me or anything. They were just compelling me to go with them, and they took me up into a craft. And it's kind of a typical experience where they put me on a table, and I could see that one side of the room was lined with the cylinders that had fetuses in them. So they told me that they were collecting genetic material to help their own race become more robust, and also to help humanity to advance, and that I had agreed to this. And they said, I asked them why I couldn't remember anything, because I wanted to remember, and they said that because it would have been too frightening for me, so they didn't allow me to remember. And also because people would have given me a hard time about it if I had told anyone. So basically it was to keep me safe. There was one other thing, that it wouldn't have benefited me in any way to remember.
Wow.
So then, now this is just from memory because I couldn't listen to the CD again, but I was regressed to the night that I saw the disc. And that time the Greys surrounded my bed and they took me up through the ceiling into the craft. And again, I was on the table. I never saw exactly what they were doing, but this time I could see, it's like behind my head, there were Mantis Beings, and they were kind of the directors. The Greys were doing the work, and the Mantis Beings were directing them, but it was like they were equal beings. They were just had different jobs.
Wow.
But the Mantis Beings just exuded this love. It was just love, it was just wonderful. And
is that what people would call unconditional love?
Yeah. And they said that they are from the star system Kappa Reticuli.
Oh, wow.
Which I had heard of before in a dream. I had dreamt about it, and I looked it up, and it is a binary star system near Zeta Reticuli. So it's in that quadrant, or whatever you call it, of the sky. And so then about 2 years ago, I heard about somebody who was doing telepathy webinars. So I took those, and that was how I got in contact with the Mantis Beings. And the first time I met them, it was like, this is all telepathic, so I could be making it up, but yeah. The first time I met them, there was just it was a group of several of them, and it was just such joy and love. It was like we were being reunited. It was just wonderful. And then I connected with them a number of times. So one time I met this being who called, and they're not gendered. They're not male and female. So I met a being who calls itself Ishtal. And Ishtal always, when I see Ishtal, it's hard not to call him he, because that's just how we language things. But there was always Zeta with him, a small gray called Othor. And I got the feeling that they're co-equals. They just travel together. But Ishtal took me to their planet, to the Mantis planet in the Kappa Reticuli system, and said that because their planetary orbit in the distant past moved closer to the sun, they had to move their civilization underground. So they have a big city that's underground. And we went down. I could see that the surface was barren. We went down through a column, on a column of light down into the interior, and first went to Ishtal's living quarters. And all the rooms there are rounded, and they're tiled with small squares, ceramic squares, and everything is really bright and clean looking. So they have very little furniture, and for his bed, there's just like a platform that they lie on. And they don't need to wear clothing or use blankets because it's a constant temperature there under the ground. And another time we went into a big room where all the Mantis people were gathered enjoying whatever they were enjoying. It's like their meeting place. And they said they were listening to a kind of music, but I couldn't hear it because it's at the wrong frequency for our hearing. Wow. And then I went into another room, a big room that was the library, which is full of objects that they've gathered from around the world. And again, I couldn't see them because I think I had no reference point for what these objects were. But I was told that if they touch an object, they can get all the information about it, like where it came from and what it's made of and what it does and everything.
Wow.
Wow.
And then
it's so interesting that you couldn't see them because you had no frame of reference.
Well, that's my assumption, because I couldn't, I could tell that there were things there, but I couldn't see what they were.
Wow.
And then the last room we went to was just so huge that you couldn't see like walls or ceiling or anything. And that's where the plant beings live. So it's like a whole jungly area where the plants are, and there was a stream beside it, and a bench where the mantis beings could sit. And the plants give green liquid to the mantis beings, and that's what they eat. So it's not like the mantis beings don't go milk the plants or whatever. The plants just voluntarily give them what they need to live. So the plants and the mantis beings are equals, and the plants take care of themselves. The mantis beings don't walk among them because, out of respect, unless the plants need something, and then they'll ask for help.
Wow.
So that's what I saw.
It sounds like an extraordinarily beautiful place where everything is, there's a symbiosis occurring there. You must have felt that while you were there.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Wow, wow.
Can I ask about you mentioned the CD that they only allowed you to listen to part? Are you saying that they blocked the CD from you hearing part of your progression?
That's what I assume.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the other question I had was about the fact that they don't have any sex. Are you able to sort of pick up whether it's the grays or the mantids, like their frequency, like it's that you think it's a male, but you can't really tell, or it's giving up a certain frequency of a female or a male?
The mantis beings they're not male and female. And I asked how they reproduce, but they said I wouldn't understand, so.
You probably would.
Tell me.
Interesting.
And the grays, I don't know. I didn't really get a sense of gender from them.
Did you have a tall gray, or it's just the small worker grays that were there?
Just the small ones, yeah.
Okay.
And they also, Othor is the Zeta who travels with Ishto, and he showed me his planet.
Oh, so describe that.
So I didn't see a lot of it, but what I saw were the buildings were just gigantically tall, needle-like, like translucent crystal, light blue crystal, all surrounded by a jungle, like jungly plants, not trees, but more vine-like, but they're huge. And I went into like down a walkway that went through a tunnel of the plants and into the building. And it had like, I guess you call them flying buttresses.
Okay.
It's like a big hallway, huge hallway with the flying buttresses and all this like bluish light from the crystal. So that was about all I saw, but it was just really beautiful there.
Did you identify the planet?
No.
It wasn't Zeta Reticuli, because that's usually where the gray.
Well, I think Zeta Reticuli is the star system.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the planet is called.
Yeah.
But I think it's in the Zeta Reticuli system.
Okay, and one last question. I'll put it back to Sinead. The woman with the hood. Just to give you some background, I mean that's pretty common that you can't see the face. I mean I know there was one very famous guy who was an experiencer where he had an invention that came to him. He saw the hooded figure, and I said, "Could you see the face?" No, couldn't see the face. So you report the same thing. How many times have you interacted with say that soul spirit guide or whatever with the?
Oh, well, before I got the guides I'm talking to now, it was a lot, like a lot of times I would feel the three of them around me, and
Yeah,
they were pretty fun.
Interesting. Go ahead, Sinead.
So there's 3 guides around you. As earlier you mentioned 3 spirit guides. Are you referring to 3 different kinds of guides now?
Yeah, well, the first ones were 3 distinct, Allura, Wally, and Oscar were 3 distinct beings.
Mm.
And now I feel like I've visualized the ones I'm talking to now as being like 3, but not really 3. I mean, they're like connected. So,
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you're mentioning 3s, because Grant knows I have this whole thing about 3s. 3s are a very, very big presence in my life, and I know they're a motif for a lot of people who are tuned in. And it seems like there's a pattern of 3s occurring within the ET UFO world as well. So that's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
And also jumping back, sorry, do you want to speak to that?
No, I was just agreeing. Yeah.
Okay. Jumping back to your experience of seeing these planets. It sounds amazing. I wish I had gone with you. But I also recall you mentioning at some point that you met a small reptilian and a blue being as well. Can you talk about what those experiences were like?
Well, the small reptilian I don't see too often. It's the only one I'm not sure of because he kind of looks like Barney, the kid's dinosaur.
Cool.
only not purple. So I went to his planet once, and it was just they didn't have buildings. It was more jungly, and they lived kind of like depressions in the earth, like cave kind of things. But he's always very sweet. And then the blue being is named Fantal, and he, in profile, his face looks kind of like iguana. It's that shape with the flat mouth and teeth. So I asked him if he was reptilian, and he said no. And I told him he looked kind of scary with all those teeth. And he said, well, we don't have the muscles to smile. But he seemed to mostly be wanting to learn about Earth. So I told him, I took him out in my front and backyard and showed him all the plants and told him about cars and how they pollute the Earth, but we like them anyway. And I told him about cats and showed him my cat and that kind of stuff. So
how did he react? Like to the cat? Like what did he respond to the stuff that you were showing him?
Not really. He was just interested, but he didn't have anything to say. He didn't really say much of anything. He was just collecting data.
Do you have the feeling at all that all these different beings that you've met, and this sounds like it goes back quite a while into not only your past life, but in this life, these experiences go back to your childhood, and you're meeting quite a variation of different kinds of beings. Do you have the feeling that they know about each other, and in terms of you, that they know that all of them are coming to visit you, and it's not just from their own perspective that they're visiting you, that they might know that all of the other beings are also visiting you?
Well, the way that we learn to do the telepathy is kind of like shamanic journeying, where you set a stage and then you invite whoever wants to come. You invite benevolent beings of the highest good. So they've all been there at the same time. It's like they sit around the table and we hold hands. And
Wow.
so yeah, they're aware of each other. And
how many beings in total would you be dealing with? The number of beings, you ever count them up?
4. Well, 4. Sometimes there are more Mantis beings than that, but the ones I mostly contact are 4 different ones, different races.
Wow.
Go ahead, Sinead.
Well, I'm so entranced. I barely know what to ask. So go ahead, Grant, please.
No, you brought up crystals. Can you describe your interactions with crystals especially if you're on another planet? Have they ever showed you crystals or talked about the importance of crystals or anything like that? Because I've heard
No,
other people talk about it. I want to hear what you've said, what they've told you.
yeah, no, they haven't said anything about it. Just that the on Othor's planet, the buildings are made of crystal.
Okay.
And I asked why they can be so exceedingly tall and skinny. And I was told that it's because the weather is more moderate than on Earth, and also because the crystal itself is very strong. But they didn't say anything about like properties, like healing properties or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and it seems like what I'm thinking now is that they have different purposes for being in touch with you, right? They want to benefit humanity. They want to, they're being scientists about it to different degrees. You know, they're kind of studying like what is life like on Earth, and they're taking some genetic material. There's some different things going on, and they're also sharing their world with you. So, what if you were unwilling to do any of this? I mean, you mentioned earlier that you made an agreement to do this in a previous life. So is that agreement, do you have the sense that that agreement is binding, and that even if you said, no, I don't want to do this, that they would still try to find a way to convince you? Or does this sit on your willingness to participate?
I'm sure it's my willingness. I'm sure that if I said, no, I'm not going to do this anymore, that I wouldn't be able to connect with them.
Hmm.
And actually, recently, I haven't been able to connect as much because they told me the time wasn't right now, which is not something I wanted to hear. They said, you know, I'm not a very patient person. So they said, well, you're just going to have to wait anyway. So
Do you
Have they
think
done
you
that
have
before?
some sort of mission in, sorry, do you think you have some sort of mission in terms of what they have for you next? Are they telling you to be prepared for something, or you're being trained to do something?
well, in the hypnotic regression, the Mantis beings told me that I would be working with them more in the future, more openly. So I have no idea what that means.
Okay.
But I think, you know, doing the readings is something that I meant to do to share them with people.
Mhm.
So
So we'll have to work on the book. We'll get you working on it.
yeah.
And also, I mean, part of the reason we wanted to interview you was to help with that, right? To assist with that message
Yeah.
being spread. So how, if people who are watching this are as entranced as we are, and they want to know more and they would like to receive the messages from the guides, what's the best way for them to do that?
The guides now have their own Facebook group called Messages from the Guides, and it's a public group, so anybody can go there. I'm pretty sure anybody can look at the messages without signing up for it.
Wow.
I'm not entirely sure how Facebook works, but, or, you know, if they want to join the group, they're certainly welcome to do that.
And then if
Fascinating.
they want to sign up for your mailing list, is that something you're comfortable with? Or, I mean, how would they get in touch with you? I guess just leave you a message on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they'd be receiving the same messages via
Yep.
the mailing list as on the Facebook page?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Did they
Yeah.
tell you to do that? Did they request that?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, they didn't actually say, go put us on Facebook. It's more like, I get this idea. Oh, gee, I need to put this on Facebook. Or, oh, gee, I need to do a mailing list. No, I don't want. No, no, I don't want to do a mailing list. You know, this is.
Yeah.
You know, you do what they tell you.
Wow. That is fascinating. It's almost, Sinead has the same, well, I have the same thing. It's like you get indirect ideas, and they're
Yeah.
coming from somewhere that are directing you towards doing something.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you have a choice of doing it or not, but there's no reason not to. If you do these things, then it takes you along to new places. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, I really related to what you said about it's not a voice. It doesn't come in words. It just arrives in your being, and you just suddenly know that this is a message. I mean, I had the same experience. It's a language, but it's not, it's sort of like a vibrational language. It's not a language that occurs in words. And often when I had that experience, I can't actually verbalize it. Like there are no words that are sufficient to verbalize it. And so sometimes I'm simply not able to verbalize it at all. But then other times I have to really just sit with it for a while because it sort of percolates a bit. It just sort of settles, like, you know, if you throw a handful of dust into the air, you have to wait for it all to come back down to the ground. It kind of feels like that. And then sometimes I feel like I can say what it was, but a lot of the time it's just a sense of knowing and understanding and a clear message that just suddenly arrives in my being. And so I have a similar experience. I don't have it nearly as much as you do and for as long as you, but I really related to you saying that.
Well, I just, you know, I have to actually sit down and do it. And sometimes I don't really want to do it. But now that I have to put these messages out every week, it's a good incentive to do the readings. I usually do them 3 times a week. And I could do them every day, but like, again, I don't want to make it so long that people won't read them, because I know if I go to Facebook and there's something that looks interesting and I click on the see more and there's this whole long thing and I say, oh, I'll read it later. And of course I never do. You know, and that may just be my bias, but that's what my feeling is about it. So it needs to be kept fairly short.
I'm glad you're doing it. Can I ask a question? And I think I know the answer, but you get a lot of people in the UFO community who sort of believe that there's some bad guys out there and, you know, they're here to take us over or eat us or whatever they want to say. So have you had any bad experiences in terms, and the question that sometimes is asked, if you had a chance to do it all over again, would you go down the same road and agree to do this again?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I've never met any bad beings, but like I said, I always set the intention that I'm going to connect with benevolent beings. So I'm not saying they're not out there, but it's not my experience.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, that's something that Grant and I have talked a great deal about, is that, you know, we both feel that it's, you know, it's your state of mind, it's your own state of mind and your own perspective that draws towards you what occurs to you, just like it does in this plane of existence. If you walk around with a terrible attitude and you're a negative thinker and you treat people horribly, then more of that is going to come your way. So to Grant and I, it's the same thing. You know, your decision to live with a certain kind of consciousness and send out a certain kind of vibration, to manifest a certain kind of vibration, it acts magnetically and it pulls more of the same towards you. And Grant's last question actually relates directly to what I wanted to ask you too, which is, you know, one of the things I really appreciate about you, Marjie, is that you're just so matter of fact about this. You know, you speak about it so calmly and you describe them, you know, all these beings in such an engaging way. Like, they have personalities, they have a quirky sense of humor, they boss you around sometimes, you know, they have full personalities, and you speak about it just so matter-of-factly and plainly and authentically that it makes it very relatable, and yet it's an extraordinary experience in this sphere of existence. So my question is, how has this changed your life? How has this impacted you as an individual? How has this impacted your life?
Well, for most of my life, I've been a pretty gloomy and depressed person. And it may be because of, you know, all the earlier experiences that I couldn't remember. And I guess it's really helped me, because I know some people get freaked out if they find out they've been contacted by aliens, you know, and they've been abducted and all that. But for me, it was like, okay, so now I can see why I had some of those weird behaviors. You know, it explained a lot for me. But on the other hand, I don't want to get into the story like a lot of people say, oh, you know, I was abducted and blah, 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 and they make up all this stuff around it. So for me, it's more like, well, you know, maybe that's when I was a kid. I always had to sleep facing the door because I was afraid somebody would come in the night. Or maybe it's why I was afraid that something was going to come out of the closet, or, you know, that kind of thing. So for me, it's kind of liberating to know that there might have been something behind that.
Have circumstances in your life changed? I mean, because of course, when we change, so does our reality around us. So having this experience of feeling freed up by this knowledge and feeling kind of validated and reassured by, you know, this experience of going, oh, okay, now I understand myself better. Had circumstances in your life also changed as a result?
Yeah, yeah, I have people around me who are really positive and supportive. I mean, my family always was, but and I have a job now that's good, and the people I work with are really, they appreciate what I do, which is different. So, yeah, so things are much better. Yeah. Oh, and there was one thing. I meditated a little today, and I kind of got in contact with the Mantis Beings, and
Oh, wow.
I asked if they had a message that they wanted to tell everybody.
Wow.
And they kind of came on the scene singing "We Are Family." So that's what they want people to know, is that, you know, they're people too. They're our family.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Grant, that's right up your alley as
Yeah.
well. Grant has a big music connection. And also I have a spirit that, you know, I call it a song spirit that's given me many of my messages through song, but Grant has written a book about that, or maybe even two. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we had an experience just week and a half ago where we were sort of indirectly given a song when we were talking about issues that we had, and suddenly they posted this song. It was like a direct message for us. So I love that. I mean, maybe we'll have to have more contact in terms of the weird things you've had, because you keep hitting these little things that other people are talking about, like the music, the crystals, the different types of beings being on the planets, and you're going through, or the woman without the face. There's all these things that you're hitting, all the sort of the marks that you go, wow, you know, like, and there's another one, you know, it's like, definitely you're in the same sort of vibration that we're in. Can I ask you, in terms of, is this the first time you've ever sort of publicly talked about this?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, you're doing a fantastic job. I appreciate so much that you're willing to be open about this, because I think you have a very, very important message in terms of the experiences you've had and the messages you're getting, that you can actually sort of tune in to the beings and the soul guides and people you're talking to and get information, which is fantastic. Where you're one of the tuned in people, I guess I would call you.
Well, I think it just feels like it's the right time for people to be speaking up now about this, and you're really helping with that.
Yeah.
And one other music thing that I think you'll like, my sister Eva and I were going to Joshua Tree, to Costa's retreat in October.
Okay.
And so we drove out from Albuquerque. It's really far, and we had missed the exit on the freeway, so we had to drive an extra hour. So we were like about 13 hours on the road.
Wow.
And we're driving through the desert by 29 Palms. It's all salt flats and sand and military proving grounds with weird energy and abandoned houses and all this. And I'm driving along, are we ever going to get there? And all of a sudden this music starts blaring out of the radio, and this guy is singing, "Everything is better on the other side." And we found out it was coming from the CD player. I bought the car used. I didn't even know it had a CD player. Somebody had left that in there, and all of a sudden it just started playing. It just cracked us up. It was so funny.
Wow. I will have to add that story. We're doing another book on music with bizarre music stories. I'll have to add that. I mean, Sinead has similar experiences where they'll play a song at the appropriate time to. You talked about synchronicities, because Sinead and I have had a tremendous number of synchronicities in the last month. Can you talk about maybe some of your stories that involve synchronicities, where weird things happen that link things together?
Uh,
I mean, I guess the song playing at that particular time is one of them.
That was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or have you had any other weird experiences? Like, sometimes people will think it's not related, but other paranormal like phenomena where there's things moving around, or you're having ghost experiences or stuff like that. Is there been a lot of that in your life that you can now sort of link that it's all the same thing?
well, one of my sisters had a ghost in her house. They
Okay.
had a really old house in Connecticut, and they would hear it walking around and opening and closing doors.
Wow.
I had a while ago, I always carry two car keys in my pocket because I'm really paranoid about locking myself out of my car.
Okay.
And one of them disappeared.
Wow.
I thought, I don't really want to spend $80 to buy another key. So I was putting it off. And a couple of weeks later, I opened my car door, and there the key was sitting on my front driver's seat. And
Beautiful.
so,
That's the kind of story I love. I'm going to put that in my book too. I do a whole book about that. It's very bizarre, and it sort of catches you, and you go like, oh, it's almost like they're getting your attention and telling you we're here, and it's that fascinating stuff. I love that. It's called the port experience. Yeah.
It reminds me of their sense of humor too, like that kind of mischievous, cheeky sense of humor they have. I wonder if they did that on purpose too, sort of play with you a little bit and be a bit mischievous.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, and then at the Joshua Tree Retreat, I had a metal water bottle. We had that picnic on Wednesday, and I had the water bottle there, and I went to leave, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I asked everyone, nobody could find it. Finally, on was it Friday night, we loaded everything into the car, our chair and blankets and all that stuff. And the next morning, when we were loading our luggage into the car to leave, I picked up the blanket that I put in there the night before, and the water bottle was in the blanket. So I did not put it there.
Very cheeky, very, very cheeky.
Yeah,
Well, Marjie,
yeah.
I'm so glad to hear this has been such a positive experience for you,
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, because there, like as Grant was referencing before, there's so many conversations happening in this field about that involve the fear factor, right? And they're coming to get us, they abduct us and hurt us. You referenced that as well. And I think I said at the beginning of this whole interview that that's one of the things I really appreciate about the way you communicate this experience, that there's no drama and sensationalizing, and there's no fear involved. It's clearly an experience of love and communication.
Well, something the guides talk about a lot is that we need to go beyond fear and leave that behind. And also, a lot of the drama and trauma in our lives is of our own making, and we need to let go of that too.
Wow. Well, thank you. I'm going to wrap now, and I'm going to sincerely thank you for being willing to share with us and the message. I will do whatever I can to help you get the message out. We'll link up stuff, and I hope you'll interact with us whenever something bizarre happens. You have our contact information, and I just can't thank you enough, because for the first time coming out, you've been very eloquent in telling your story and very open about what you've got. And I'll do whatever I can to make sure the guides get some help from us to help you in getting your journey done, or your mission, or whatever it is.
Well, thank you. It's been fun. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Good time.
And thank you to Sinead. Have you got your homework done for tomorrow?
Not yet. I'm working on it. And Marjie, thank you so much again. I know this might not have been the most comfortable experience for you, given that it's your first outing. And I just really appreciate you being here. And Grant, thank you for providing an audience for Marjie and the guide's message. That means a lot.
I'm honored. I'm honored to do it. And let's talk again. I'm sure we'll find out there's a bunch of stuff that I didn't hear about, and we'll probably contact you again and maybe do a shorter interview where we try to find out some more stuff that will help people and help us and help the world.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Thank you very much, and have a good day.
We're all about helping people.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
A lot.
Thank you very much, Marjie.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Recording has finished.